For the highest quality long-term storage food in the market, go to jdrucker.com/food, jdrucker.com/food, and use promo code PATRIOT for a very nice discount. Stories out of California regarding fraud are coming out in rapid fire succession. But there's this one story that really caught my attention, not because it's the biggest of the stories. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud being discovered right now in California. But this particular story caught my interest because this is the ideal. This is textbook. If you're in the media, you got to cover this, right? Because it's right there, you know? And yet I'm out here in California. I'm not hearing anything about it. I'm checking the various news sites. I'm going, not watching on TV, but at least checking out their YouTube channels. Nobody's covering this. And this is huge. And there's a reason why, actually, 3 reasons why they're not covering it. We have this over at truthbasedmedia.com. Rampant fraud is being discovered in California thanks to the people like independent journalist Nick Shirley and others. But this particular story, it fits the mold of top story, lead story. Okay, so you got to talk about Iran, but here, let's also talk about this because this is a big deal. Why? Because it's one guy who stole massive amounts of money, taxpayer money, and for years, maybe decades, he was getting away with it. According to the article, Paul, where'd it go? Paul, there we go. Paul Richard Randall pleaded guilty to wire fraud in a Medi-Cal scheme that billed over $269 million and received more than $178 million in improper payouts. The fraud involved claims for high-cost drugs that were actually cheap generics or never dispensed at all. Pretty easy to track. He exploited relaxed verification rules because, of course, this is California. This single case fits into a broader pattern of California fraud estimated at $180 billion plus across programs like Medi-Cal, unemployment, hospice, and welfare under Governor Gavin Newsom. Federal prosecutors and auditors continue to ramp up scrutiny, including the Department of Labor, strike team investigating EDD, yet National Legacy Media has largely remained silent on it. And again, we're also talking about local media that hasn't said much about it. The reason why, here it is. It comes down to 3 things. Number 1, it's in California. So that's Gavin Newsom territory. And yes, the legacy media is going to cover up for him. They would much rather spend as much time as they can trying to normalize Jennifer Siebel Newsom because she's so weird. Okay, she makes Casey DeSantis seem normal. Whatever happened to Nancy Reagan or whatever? I just don't get it. Anyway, yeah, and he's their golden boy for 2028, at least as of now. So Legacy Media doesn't want to cover that. Number 2, this would be and is a huge win for the Trump administration. J.D. Vance, Dr. Oz being very visible out here. You've got different members of the administration coming out, and I mean, it's like Candyland. Okay, you could take a rock and throw it, and you're going to hit some kind of fraudster out here. And when they say 180 billion, 200 billion, however many billions or hundreds of billions, when we really look at this, I would say that we're going to discover that this goes into the trillions as far as the long-term scams occurring here in California. Number 3, and this is the most important one. This was discovered by and highlighted by people like Nick Shirley. That is an assault on the fundamentals, the core heart and soul of these self-described legacy media journalists who because if they cover it now, they're acknowledging that right under their noses, on their watch, they couldn't discover what some kid with an iPhone was able to discover on his own. And it's not just him, it's others. I mean, people are coming out here, again, just like the politicians and bureaucrats are coming out here and discovering fraud so easily, so too are the independent journalists. You can hey, look, if you're a budding independent journalist, come out here, come to California, pick an industry, anything that gets any government funding, knock on some doors, and you'll find fraud. That's how bad it is. And it's going to be covered up because of the first two reasons, but the biggest reason that we're never going to hear anything about this from legacy media is because if they cover it now, they're acknowledging that they suck. Now, with that said, let's get into the parts that I can't really discuss on YouTube. So if you're listening to this, you can check it out on Rumble and other places. I've been doing very well on Apple Podcasts. I'm very appreciative of that. Be sure to subscribe, Truth Based Media. But yeah, let's get into the dirty part of this. There is a fourth reason. And this gets into a little bit of conspiracy theory stuff, but I could back this up. Unfortunately, I can't make the accusations publicly, in the bigger channels because, they'll shut me down because they still do that despite all the amazing changes that have been happening in recent years. It's still bad enough to where I can't say that this is intentional and that it's part of a big scam, a huge con being perpetrated by Democrats for the most part. There are definitely some rhinos, Republicans, uniparty swampsters that are involved. A whole bunch of the bureaucrats. And unfortunately, this is the scary part, many members of legacy media are directly involved in these scams. I know that they get the benefit of not getting as much scrutiny because they're supposed to be the scrutinizers, right? I mean, if you're going to run a con, you do it from the position where you're supposed to be doing the scrutinizing. That's how a lot of these scams work, by the way, is that the bad guys just capture the watchdogs, right? And so they go out and they grease the palms of this bureaucrat, that bureaucrat, this low-level worker, this middle manager, and all of a sudden they've got a scam that cannot be discovered unless, of course, somebody applies common sense and goes and knocks on doors and realizes that the Leering Center is not really doing anything because they don't have any kids there. Again, this isn't rocket science, but nobody saw Nick Shirley coming. Nobody saw any of these independent journalists coming. They thought, you know what? As long as we can control two things, we control the watchdogs within government, okay, the bureaucrats, the ones that are supposed to be the administrators, and yes, even the low-level people. We control them. We make sure that they are complicit in the crimes. Therefore, they get some money, or they get some consideration, or they get a promotion, or they don't get fired, or they don't get whatever. Okay, they get that. And we got that covered. And then the other watchdogs, which are supposed to be legacy media, we got to cover for them, or we got to cover them up, get them to cover us up, I guess is the best way to put it. And how do they do that? They pay them. That's right. They directly pay them. Now, it's not always like, oh, here's what's your Venmo, okay? Though that does, of course, occur. It is in sometimes jobs for other people, members of the family. Maybe a journalist's husband or wife gets a nice cush government job where they don't have to do much except for get paid. And then it also comes down to access to, if you want the scoop of a lifetime, if you want to move your way up, work your way over into NBC corporate or whatever their dreams are, they can help. They can get that as long as, don't look at this stuff. Just look at this stuff instead. We're going to give you stuff to look at. You want to talk about this? Stand down. Stand down. And we've seen this time again. This isn't new, by the way. This is very, very old. It's been happening for a long time. I think one of the most famous instances of this was when, I forgot the journalist's name, and she was a national journalist. She wasn't even local. She was a national journalist. She's like, and they caught her on a hot mic after, she didn't realize taping was still going on. It was right after the Epstein arrest. She's like, I had the Epstein story like 5 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever. I had it, and they wouldn't let me publish it. I had him on this, I had him on that, and they wouldn't let me touch it. Why? Because they were told to stand down. Another great example. I wish I had this on me. I might. No, I don't think I have it. I'll find it later. There was a whistleblower journalists come out. They had done this 5 on your side going after Monsanto. This is back maybe, I don't know, 90s. I think it was 90s. Could have been 2000s. It was a while ago. But they got it. They were investigating. They had the story. They had everything ready to go, produced, ready to air. Bombshells dropped. Just, it's like, hey, we've consulted with some people. We think we're not going to run your story. We think we're going to pass on that. There's a recent one. I mean, this just happened. This just dropped on Wednesday. Steve Baker, he was at the Blaze, one of the top most, just, I mean, I don't idolize any human, anybody, and ever, but I like Steve Baker a lot, and he'd be on my list of people that I'd love to take to dinner because the dude's tenacious. He's gone to jail for his work. Okay, this guy is a bulldog, unafraid. I've asked him to come on my show. We'll see. But he did actually go and do an interview last week with Megyn Kelly. And, he was talking about the whole J6 stuff. For those who aren't familiar with it, he's been saying since before Brian Cole Jr. was arrested, Baker and his team have been pointing the finger at I forgot her name, an former FBI. She was FBI during January 6th. She ended up moving over to CIA. She's got some high-powered attorneys. They're suing everybody. Blaze had to take stuff down. Everybody had to take stuff down, claiming that this lady was better fit, he claimed because of her gait and because of this, that, and the other, that she was very likely the J6 pipe bomber. And that was reiterated further when it was revealed that she didn't pass a polygraph when they asked, are you the J6 pipe bomber? And did you plant the bombs on January 5th, the night of January 5th into January 6th or whatever? And she didn't, the polygraph said she was lying. That's, hello. That should be enough to say, hey, maybe Brian Cole Jr., the odd autistic guy that for some reason wanted to do stuff and nobody's ever really focused on that. So Steve Baker's been out there. He's the tip of the spear. He's been bringing all this information out as much as he can get. Again, he went to jail for his actions on J6, and which were nothing. He was among the many victims of J6 persecution, and yet, so he gets on. He's got this new information. He gets on, apparently does an interview, and I haven't confirmed this with Megyn Kelly's team, but according to Baker, he went out, he did an interview. It was supposed to be a live interview. At the last minute, they said, hey, guess what? We're not going to do it live. We're going to air it later. It's like, okay. And he does the interview. They claimed that because there was new information that had come out, they wanted to, I don't know, whatever the excuse was. A week later, they sent him a note saying, hey, we're just not going to air it at all. Spoke to our attorneys, can't verify some stuff, whatever. Here's the thing. I'm not going to accuse that. I don't want to put them in the exact same realm as, for example, covering up for the California massive California fraud out here. They're different things. Okay, what Megyn Kelly, they don't want to get sued. It's not that I don't think anybody paid them to drop the J6, the Steve Baker interview, and then Monsanto's slightly different. Because I think that was more of a threat, corporate threat, okay? Big food, big pharma, big ag, they all have a whole lot of control over legacy media. And they do this through advertising, of course. And if there's a story that's going to come out against them, that's a lot of loss for a lot of news channels out there. So that, at least that's how it used to work. It's a little bit different today, and I'll cover that some other time. But yeah, so with the Monsanto thing, I think that was more of a threat. But when we're talking about the current cover-up, the ongoing cover-up of all the fraud, it's happening in California, Minnesota, Maine. It's not just a California thing. It's happening everywhere. And there are journalists everywhere who are in some way, I won't say that they're all paid, but they are in some way incentivized to turn a blind eye to obvious stories like this one. Okay? This guy stole over $200 million. Okay? This guy didn't. I mean, it makes local news and sometimes national news when somebody steals like a couple 100,000. Okay. Oh my gosh, they scammed this taxpayers out of $200,000. The shame, the shame. And this guy steals hundreds of millions, and it's crickets from legacy media. He's already been convicted. Okay, this isn't like, oh, well, we'll see how the evidence plays out. No, it's done. But nobody's covering it. Nobody's talking about it. Is it just too small now that the scale has gone up? Now that we're talking about hundreds of billions, if not over $1 trillion worth of fraud in California alone, does that mean that his peddly $200 million is not worth covering? No, because it's of the type of fraud that they don't want us to know about. They being the bureaucrats, the government, the deep state, the uniparty swamp, the globalist elite cabal. Pick your enemy. None of them want us to know that our tax dollars, our massive tax dollars here in California, are being stolen. Stolen by people who are being helped along by the government, who are probably getting, these people are probably paying at least, kickbacks to some extent to people in the government. And then that is translated into cover-ups in legacy media. This is so important. I'm not saying this as well as I'd like. I want you to understand the gravity of this, because it's a system that is not supposed to be broken. It's a system that they go into this thinking, if we got this covered and this covered, then we can't get caught. And they were right for a long time, for years, maybe decades. These types of scams are rampant in America. This is part of the reason that our nation is suffering so much, why we have such an almost insurmountable, and maybe it is insurmountable, national debt, why we can't get a budget done that works in any state. This is one of the reasons why. It's because they con us. They con us out of our taxpayer dollars, and they put it into their pockets one way or the other. There's always the money flows up and down, left and right, and you can't see it. You can't see it as a whole because it's like little capillaries, right? We can only see the veins, the arteries, but there's millions of capillaries. Just a little bit of hush money here, a little bit of hush money there, a little threat here, a little bullying there. And it's so destructive. And again, it was designed to not be able to fail. They saw everything coming, but they didn't see Nick Shirley. They didn't see other independent journalists, people who don't care. You can't preemptively stop them because they got their video on YouTube before you even know they exist. It's not like a NBC newsroom where it's like, oh, somebody's working on this story. It's going to go out at 5 p.m. What do you want us to do, boss? Well, you got to get them to kill the story. You can't kill a story that's coming from independent journalists like Nick Shirley. So the moral of the story, we need more Nick Shirleys. There was a time not too long ago when pretty much every conservative host, podcaster, website, they all had MyPillow codes. Those were the glory days. Of course, there's been saturation in the market. Most people who were going to ever buy a MyPillow have already bought one. And so a lot of people have stopped promoting the company. We will always promote the company because I love Mike Lindell. I consider him a friend. The company itself is still just as all-American as it's always been, and the quality of the merchandise, the pillows, the Giza Dream Sheets, the mattress toppers, all of that stuff is still absolutely phenomenal. So we are not going to abandon MyPillow. I strongly encourage you to go to mypillow.com/JDR. Those are my initials. mypillow.com/JDR. Use promo code JDR. And take advantage of this amazing company. Support them, support us, and God bless America. Should you buy survival food or should you just make it yourself? It's a question that a lot of people have asked me. I'm sure they've asked themselves and other preppers, even more so, whether you're new or you're old at prepping. It's a question that comes up quite often. There's a convenience to just buying it and having it shipped. Of course, there's an expense. There are other things to take into consideration. We're going to go over those four things, four basically questions to ask yourself before deciding whether to do one or the other or both. I would not recommend doing neither. It is we're in a state, a position in world history when I do believe that it would behoove us to store up, just like Joseph did in the book of Genesis, stored up for 7 years in preparation for 7 years of famine, and he was able to not only feed the nation that kidnapped him, but also the nation that ended up being built as a result of his actions, and that's a wonderful story. But we may or may not have 7 years. So, and I'll talk about that here in a second. I'll save that one for the end. I would recommend, if you are new to the channel, new to the podcast, you should go to lateprepper.com. That is my Substack for preparedness, and sign up. It's free. Just get your emails, get your articles, get your videos and podcasts and all that sent directly to your inbox, and I definitely will never spam you. So we've got this article over there at lateprepper.com. Right off the bat, it says the decision between buying commercial survival food and making your own ultimately comes down to 4 key factors: cost, space, time, and dedication. And there are 2 other factors, which again, I'll bring those up, but those aren't necessarily, they're more direct and personal. So let's start with cost. In the long term, depending upon how well you're able to use your equipment and how often you use it, in the long term, it can take anywhere from 12 months all the way up to, if you're going slow, might take you 36 months to recoup your costs if you do it yourself. Why? Because canning equipment, if you're going to get into canning, the setup for canning can be quite, it can be relatively cheap. You can actually do it on the very, very cheap, but you're lacking quality if you go down that road. If you go with better equipment, better with pressure canning, then it's going to cost you some money. And then there's freeze drying. Freeze drying is something that, well, it's expensive up front. I mean, it costs just a home freeze dryer itself costs between $2,000 and $5,000 generally, and you still have to pay for the maintenance. Maintenance includes oil. You've got to be able to get your own bags, get your own buckets, get your own whatever it is that you're going to be using to store these away. Now, the advantage, of course, is that you get the food that you want. You don't have to pick from a menu of food that oftentimes isn't very good quality, to be very fair. One company does have great quality, and I'll talk about them here in a second. But yeah, so if you can do it, if you're going to be dedicated to it and you're going to do it every day, right? Or every other day, or at least 2 or 3, 4 times a week, then yeah, you can recoup that cost compared to just buying the same volume of food from a freeze-dried survival company. You can recoup your cost anywhere from 12 to 36 months. I think 18 to 24 is the average. That's for somebody who's doing it. They're not freaking out, and they didn't turn it into a full-blown lifestyle, which there's nothing wrong with that. If you're one of those freeze-dry survival food lifestyle people, awesome. We call them lifestyle preppers. Go for it. That's great. For those who just do it, you do it when you can. You do it when you have leftovers. You do it when there's a big sale at wherever you shop, preferably a local farmer's market. Then yeah, grab what you can, get it all freeze-dried up, keep that going. So 12 to 36 months. On the other hand, you can buy it yourself. You can order it through various survival food companies out there. It's your call. Now, to be clear, we work with one company. I've tried all of them. Okay, I've tried every food company out there. There's a couple that are pretty good. Most of them are crap. Okay, the one that I love, that I adore, Heaven's Harvest. You can check them out at patriot.tv/harvest. I'm sorry, /food. I've got Harvest Right and Heaven's Harvest. Heaven's Harvest, which sells the food directly to you, and seeds and all kinds of cool stuff. You can check them out at patriot.tv/food. And if you use Patriot as the promo code, so promo code Patriot, you get 15% off. And that's not an insignificant amount. So, in which case, if you are going to buy and you get 15% off, who knows? Maybe it would take longer to recoup if you were to do it yourself. I'm not pushing you in one direction or the other. I'm just telling you that those are the things to take into consideration. Number two, space. Now, obviously, food is food, right? You know, the buckets that you get empty and fill them up are the same size as the buckets that these companies buy. Number 10 cans, whatever it is that you're using, jars for the most part. Jars, if you are going to be doing canning yourself, you can actually usually get bigger jars than what's being sold at the grocery store for a lot of the foods. So you can store more in a single. So I guess there's a little bit of an advantage space-wise. Where the real constraint comes in, where you need to take into consideration, you got to have a workspace. Okay, you got to have an area where you can put your freeze dryer. It's got to be on a table. It's a heavy machine. I mean, it's big. Okay, I'll take a picture of mine so you can see how big it is. It's big and it's loud. So you'd prefer to have it in a space away from anybody who's sleeping or reading or watching TV or whatever it is that they're doing. And then with canning, that's obviously it's going to be done in a kitchen or kitchen type area, but you still need to be able to prepare everything. You need the sinks, you need all this stuff. It takes space, not a ton of space. I mean, you don't need to have like add a new wing to your homestead or anything for it, but you do have to take that into consideration. If you're living in an apartment, I wouldn't recommend getting yourself a freeze dryer. Number three, time. Do you have the time? You know, there's certain things that we buy in life that, you know, we have the best intentions, but if we don't have the time to use them, what's the point? Okay, a freeze dryer or canning setup that can turn very quickly into a gym membership, except a lot more expensive and staring at you every day in your own home. We'll call it, it's like a at-home gym that you don't ever use. Okay, it's like that bread maker that you got. You thought, my gosh, I'm going to make fresh bread once a week. We're never going to get Wonder Bread again, and that lasts for about 3 weeks, and then you haven't used it ever since. That's what can happen if you don't have the time. And it's not just having it; it's dedicating it to it. This does take time. It's not. You don't have to, again, be a lifestyle prepper and make that what you do as far as your enjoyment, your time, your exercise, your social stuff. I actually know a freeze drying. I don't know what you want to call them. They're a group. They're here locally, and there's these two ladies and a guy. They get together, 2 or 3 times a week. They bring in their foods they were able to collect. Some of it's leftovers, some of it's whatever, things that they just bought at the market, and then they go and they get everything set up. They bust everything out together, get it in the freeze dryer, and then set it for the 18 to 24 hours, depending on whether they're freeze drying. And then they just sit and talk for a while, and then they come back the next day and collect their spoils, and they split it up. The whole point is that they take it and they put in their parts, but then they each get like 1/3. Does that make sense? Anyway, it's fun, I guess. Social. It's great. They're all older, so I'm sure that this is really really joyous for them. But with that said, making sure that you have the time, that you're willing to spend the time and do it. Otherwise, it's that Bowflex in your garage, right? You don't want to do that. Last but not least, dedication. Are you going to not just do it, but are you going to commit to doing it right? And again, I don't think that you have to make massive lifestyle changes, but in a way you do. Here's the thing. If you just want to get a rotating supply, 3 to 6 months worth of food, you don't need a freeze dryer. You don't need a canning setup. Okay? That's overkill. You don't even need to buy prepper food, really. For the most part, you can just keep a rotation out of the grocery store, just regular grocery shopping. Keep your cans, keep your rice, keep your pastas, keep your jars, get the You won't have 6 months worth of bread unless you're milling your own flour, of course, or you storing flour, I should say, or milling. But it really is something that it should change the way that you live if you're going to do it right. And that oftentimes means really big changes. I'm talking about moving. I'm talking about like going out and getting a homestead, because through all this, whether you're going to buy or do it yourself, the best thing you could do is to create, if you have the resources and the time, the physical capabilities to create your own food security, create your own food infrastructure, then long-term storage is not nearly as important. It's still important. I'm not saying, oh, you got a big garden, so you don't need a freeze dryer, you don't need any long-term storage food, you don't even need to fill up your pantry, because you'll just go out and eat cucumbers and zucchinis for, however long the apocalypse lasts. Obviously, there are massive challenges to that, though I do recommend, again, this coincides especially if you're doing it yourself. There's nothing. I remember the first time I tasted one of the tomatoes that my wife grew, and it was, maybe I'm biased, maybe it was a psychological trick, but it was the best tasting tomato I have ever had, and I loved it, and I still remember it. It was a cherry tomato. It wasn't even like a big tomato. It was a cherry tomato. It's like, wow, wow, that's got. So this is what life used to be like. We had a long discussion about that. The point is that, yeah, if you can make those changes, then do it, because it really is the smart way to go. Now the the ultimate question to ask yourself, two questions. Number one, if you are going to do this, if you're going to commit, and if you're going to get your family involved, then don't just go ask yourself those four questions and then go grab a freeze dryer, right? Or go order a bunch of food. You have to decide a plan. You have to come up with what is your scenario? Am I going to have to move? Should you move? Are you living in Detroit? Move. you know, Not nothing against. Well, I guess that's still a little bit against Detroit, but yeah, there's nothing there, and it's going to be disastrous there, or L.A., or even it's not just about the big cities. Even a lot of the smaller towns, maybe not smaller towns, but smaller cities. Under 100,000, but over 20,000. There's still going to be challenges there if and when certain types of apocalyptic situations take place. So take that into consideration. So the the biggest question to me that you have to ask yourself is, are we in the biblical end times? I hate to dance around the subject, but I just want to make sure that I word this the right way. Because if your thought is that the world's going kind of crazy, we've got things are going to be crazier and crazier in the next decade or two, then by all means, make the change, but make the change in a way that fits your lifestyle. And that means, again, adjusting that lifestyle to work would mean making your own food. It really would. I mean, bottom line is you should make your own food. If you think that we're good for the next decade or two, then you're going to get your money back. It's going to be better. And well, one quick caveat there. If you or your spouse or whoever it is in your family that does the cooking, if they're good at cooking, then there's a huge upside. Okay, we've had freeze-dried food that we've made, and it is just degrees of magnitude better than what everybody else is selling, because they're companies. I mean, they do, outside of Heaven's Harvest, which you can find at patriot.tv/food. Outside of them, these companies, they use the cheapest possible food. Heaven's Harvest, for the record, they're out of Georgia. They use all American food, and they use heirloom seeds to make their food. Not saying, just saying. That's why it makes theirs really good. I'd still take my wife's though. I mean, again, if I thought that we had 2 or 3 decades left, or even a decade left before things started to get really crazy, or potentially, I'm not trying to predict here. I'm just saying it feels like it's going to go crazy sooner rather than later. So for me, I'm buying the food. with that said, I've got a freeze dryer, and we use that too. So I guess the correct answer, if you think that things are going to be going crazy between, say, I don't know, now and 2030, then why not both? If you got the resources, get the freeze dryer, buy some food. And if you do get a freeze dryer, the best place to do that is the incorrectly aforementioned, patriot.tv/harvest. They will take great care of you. And if you go use that link, I believe the discount is already automatically applied. So you're in good shape. Patriot.tv/harvest. See, I play both sides on this one, but not because, to be clear, I've been playing both sides. I've been using these guys, both companies, as sponsors since before the show even existed. So I don't want you to think, oh, he picked up Prepper Food sponsors because he's got a Prepper Substack and a Prepper show. No, the other way around, actually. I've been a Prepper for a long time. I've tested out the companies. These are the companies that I love. These are the companies that I work with. And these are the companies that I wholeheartedly personally recommend. It's not about I can make bigger commissions with some of those bigger companies that a lot of those show hosts out there, conservative podcasters and stuff, they push those mega companies. When I'm talking about the mass produced crap that is, I mean, they hope that there's no apocalypse, not because, of course, that would be crazy, but because then people would be busting out their food and be like, what the heck is this? Ugh, nasty. Patriot.tv/food is not nasty. So that's it. Yeah, personal decision. For me, it's both. For you, it might be one, the other. I just hope it's not neither, because I do believe that things are going to be crazy. I do believe that we are going to be needing, on a personal, familial level, possibly even at a community level, we will need years worth of food, decades potentially worth of food. Freeze-dried food can last 25 years depending upon the food. Canned food depends upon who you ask. I don't want to set a date to it, but there's a very wide range that the experts say as far as how long canned foods can last and the different types of canned foods. There are those, just for the record, there are those that say that it can actually, a good canned food, properly canned and stored in the right places, can actually outlast freeze-dried food. Oh, one quick note, the reason I don't like dehydrated food, it's not true preservation. It does preserve, but we're talking about, 12 months, 24 months max for most foods. And it takes away the nutritional value, takes away the quality as far as, just being able to eat it. You don't want to go into the apocalypse with food that you don't like. So there is that. Either way, no matter what, don't stress. Don't be scared. Yes, I'm a prepper, but I'm not a prepper out of fear. I'm a prepper out of just biblical stewardship. Of course, I want to not be beholden to government to keep my family alive when things start to go south. That's called self-sufficiency. It's called taking responsibility, taking control as much as possible, but understanding that no matter what happens, that we have a sovereign God who is truly in control. And no matter how bad things get now, we know that in the very end, it works out very well for us. If you've been paying attention to gold and silver prices, there's a good chance that you are considering buying physical precious metals, right? Makes sense. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, but I personally would never buy numismatics or collectibles or anything like that. They're overpriced. The prices are inflated for no apparent reason. I am a bullion fan, which is why I work with Advisor Bullion. Ira over there does a fantastic job. Just the most straightforward and honest guy I know in the business. And he's been doing it for a very long time. That's why I strongly recommend going to patriot.tv/gold, patriot.tv/gold, and working with Ira, whether you're wanting to buy gold or silver through cash purchase to put in your safe, or if you want to do a retirement rollover or transfer. Best way to do it is to go to patriot.tv/gold, talk to Ira, and he will take fantastic care of you. We're currently watching a very important story getting memory hold. It's getting pushed away. It's not getting covered nearly enough. It got a little bit of attention for a little bit of time, but then it got buried. and we haven't heard anything about it since. And so we're going to talk about it here and try to keep that flame alive for as long as possible. I'm talking about the story of the dead scientists, the scientists who died or went missing over a very short period of time, that all had connections with government programs, research, the type of stuff that surrounds one particular type of topic that it's pretty telling. And then when you look at the timing of everything and the circumstances, you put it all together, and you either have to be a person who blindly believes that everything's a coincidence whenever it's not, or you're like, wow, yeah, there's definitely something to this. I mean, we had multiple members of Congress come out and sort of talk about it, but then they even hedge their bets. You had Tim Burchett say, hey, I'm telling you all this stuff. I think there's something to it, but I just want you all to know that I'm not suicidal. He has a personality that would say something like that in jest, but it's also, as we all know, when people make jokes like that, they're at least partially serious. We have a problem with this kind of stuff, though. Whenever there's an important story, if they will do everything they can to just not talk about it, they being legacy media and their puppet masters in the deep state. But if they are forced to talk about it, then they give out disinformation, misinformation, and most importantly, distractions. So before we get into this story itself, I want to explain that part real quick, because there's three ways that they basically cancel the news, right? If they want something to not be talked about, to not be discussed, to not be on the minds of the American people, they use three different tactics. Tactic number one is to ignore it. Just ignore it. Just not a big deal. And that's what we're dealing with here with the dead scientists. They're just going to pretend like there's nothing here. It's the most common tactic that they use, and it's effective for stories that are big, but that take maybe a little bit more of a reminder that they're too complicated, basically. In other words, like, it's not just a straight up individual story. It needs investigation. It needs a lot more prompting. It needs attention. And if that's the case, then media just declines to give it attention. It's call it a silent veto. Okay? And that's what's happening with this story. It's not big enough, right? It should be. It's clear that there's something crazy going on, something conspiratorial going on here, but nothing. We got nothing. They're saying nothing about it. The second type of cover-up is it's basically the slam the door on it, right? And hide the information, top secret and national security, and the conspiracy theorists are out there saying conspiracy theory things, and it's just taken at face value. We just don't know. We can't tell. They can pinpoint people. They know everything about them, but when it's not convenient for them to know anything about a particular person or people, then all of a sudden they're like, I don't know. I mean, they pull what is it, Sergeant Schultz? That's an old reference. I know nothing. So yeah, that's an example of that would be we're going on nearly a decade, and we know nothing about Stephen Paddock, the alleged shooter at Mandalay Bay, biggest mass shooting in American history. Hello. And yet just every single door kept getting slammed. Some journalists, because it wasn't a story that you could just ignore, it's a huge story, and yet we didn't get any information. Nothing. I mean, they still can't tell us what he was doing, why he did it, anything. I mean, here's a guy that allegedly went through took extreme measures to be able to do a mass shooting at a country concert in Vegas, apparently for no reason. I mean, they give us reasons for everything. They know. I mean, they will investigate a mom because she went to a church and now she's at a school board meeting and they will have every detail about her life investigated, right? But we know nothing after nearly a decade about the Mandalay Bay shooter. Now, we do know certain things, and this is why I bring this up, is that independent journalists were able to go out there. I know a couple of them. They were able to go and really dig out some information, some crazy information, following what happened to officials, especially law enforcement officials, after the event, seeing if they were maybe going on long vacations or buying Bentleys or maybe getting transferred over to Maui ahead of the Maui fires, stuff like that. And I mean, it's so crystal clear that it was a shutdown cover-up. That's what we'll call these. That's a shutdown cover-up. When you just say, nope, can't tell you that, not going to tell you that, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We don't have the information about that, sorry. And eventually, reporters get tired of being told they just don't have any information, so they just stop asking, and then it goes away, eventually. The third type, and I know we're going to be talking about the scientists soon, but it's important. I got to get this off my chest because you all need to know this stuff. The third type of cover-up is what we've seen very recently, and that's the smoke screen. That's when you have, that's the distraction. That's when you have an extremely important story. They can't say nothing about it. They can't say they don't know because it's already known. Okay, maybe you have video evidence of something. Maybe you got files or pictures or whatever. It's not like you can't say we don't know what happened here because the information is out in the public. When that situation happens, you get the ugliest, as far as I'm concerned, the ugliest type of cover-up, and that's the distraction cover-up. That's the find a bigger story. That's it. Find a bigger story. And of course, I'm talking about the Epstein Files release, which there should have been wall-to-wall coverage every day till now, even. Okay, it really should have been ever since, because there's been we're talking about millions of files, dozens of people implicated in some form or fashion. Questions need to be asked. People need to be not just called before Congress. Okay, I like James Comer, but what can he do? He's got Bill Gates coming to see him. What's Bill gonna say? Oh, you caught me. Yeah, I was doing this and that on Epstein Island. No, he's just gonna deny everything. So, okay, well, but by golly, we got him on record denying everything. Yay. Until people are in jail and, charged, jailed, prosecuted, and then put into prison for a long, long time, we got nothing. And nobody is crying for that, and very few people are crying for that anymore because we got distracted. By what? What could possibly distract from the biggest file drop in government history, bigger than the JFK file drop? Because the JFK file drop, that could implicate one organization, the CIA, whereas the Epstein files and the evidence that we still don't have yet, all of that can implicate the most powerful people currently here today. Do I want to implicate the CIA from 60 years ago? Sure, that'd be nice, but I'd much rather go after people who are actually still pulling levers and dangling puppeteer strings and doing all that stuff, walking free and manipulating the world today. Those are the people that I want to go after. The Epstein files should have been the key to that, and yet we got nothing. We got nothing. Why? Because legacy media was told to focus on one thing: Nancy Guthrie. The kidnapping and hopefully just kidnapping. Lord forbid, but let's face it, she might be murdered. We don't know. And yeah, it's sad. Okay, a show host's mom disappears. Okay, yeah, that's a story. But it's not 2.5 weeks of nonstop coverage, top story coverage ahead of the Epstein files. Not at all. If you make the case for day one, fine. But they dragged it out. They got all the law enforcement involved. They had they had reconstructions. Legacy media was bringing experts on footprints and blood samples and forestry in the area and what this sheriff got wrong and what this what should have been done and why, where is she, and what about the note? Let's analyze the note. Let's just, Guthrie. Let's just focus on that. President Trump got involved. Folks, this was a distraction. I'm not saying that it's not important that a woman disappeared, but women, especially elderly women, elderly men, disappear every day. Little children disappear every day. They don't get, if you were to take every missing person, everyone who was potentially kidnapped since Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped, combine all of the coverage, news coverage about them, it would still be less than how much legacy media covered Nancy Guthrie. Again, I'm just not going to downplay it so much. I just want to put it into what the real perspective. It was a story. It should have been a story for about a day, was with the occasional updates, but not top news story of the day every day for 2.5 weeks. Not with the Epstein files. But that's exactly why it was elevated to top story for 2.5 weeks, because they couldn't get anything else to stick. Notice that as soon as something else started sticking, other stories started popping. Iran war started. Now all of a sudden, okay, we don't need. Now there's never any stories about Nancy Guthrie. Occasional, a few stories. All that was a prelude to this story, and I want you to listen very carefully. I'm going to. We have this story over at basedunderground.com. For those who maybe you're new to the show, I don't read out loud very well. It's the only reason that I use. Yes, I use AI JD Rucker, the AI version of JD, to read the story. It's people have, I've thought about using a different voice, but then people get confused, and it's like, so yes, I use my voice for this. This isn't me reading it. This is AI Rucker reading it, and but when it's done, I'll explain to you on the other side what all this means. What we have to do next.
In the geometry of American defense research, 3 cities form the backbone of the nation's most classified aerospace programs. Southern California, where the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Caltech's Infrared Processing Centers anchor NASA's planetary work. Albuquerque, home to Kirtland Air Force Base and Sandia National Labs. And Dayton, Ohio, where Wright-Patterson has for decades been the nerve center of the Air Force Research Laboratory. Since July 2024, at least 9 scientists, engineers, and defense-connected personnel tied to these exact nodes have died under unexplained circumstances, disappeared without a trace, or been found murdered. Congress is alarmed. The FBI is involved. And the institutions that lost these people have, in nearly every case, said as little as possible. That silence is the first thing that demands explanation. Consider the deaths themselves. Monica Jacinto Reza, a NASA aerospace engineer and co-inventor of Mondaloy, a family of nickel-based superalloys designed to withstand oxygen-rich environments and extreme heat in rocket engines, vanished on June 22, 2025, while hiking with friends in the Angeles National Forest. Despite searches involving helicopters, drones, and canine units, only a beanie and lip balm were recovered. Her body was never found. Melissa Casillas, an administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Laboratory, disappeared just 4 days later, last seen walking alone on Highway 518 near Talpa, New Mexico. Carl Grillmayer, an astrophysicist at Caltech's Infrared Processing and Analysis Center, who spent nearly 30 years validating data pipelines for detecting Earth-threatening asteroids, was shot dead on the front porch of his home in Llano, California, on February 16, 2026. Retired Major General William Neal McCasland, who once oversaw $4.4 billion in classified aerospace research and development and served as Executive Secretary of the Special Access Program Oversight Committee, the body with full purview of every SAP in the Department of Defense, vanished from his Albuquerque home on February 27, 2026, leaving behind his phone and glasses, but taking his wallet, boots, and a .38 revolver. Nuno Loureiro, director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center and a leading researcher in nuclear fusion and nonlinear plasma dynamics, was fatally shot at his home in Brookline, Massachusetts, on December 15, 2025. Jason Thomas, Assistant Director at Novartis Institutes for Biomedical Research with active Department of Defense contracts, was reported missing on December 13, 2025, and found dead in a Massachusetts lake on March 17, 2026. Each case, taken alone, might be explained away. Taken together, they compose something harder to dismiss. The natural response of a prudent mind is caution. Coincidence exists. Defense researchers live in the same country as everyone else and are not exempt from homicides, accidents, or suicides. Several analysts have noted that available reporting does not establish a verified, coordinated campaign, and that coincidence, occupational risk, or unrelated criminal acts could explain parts of the pattern. That is true. If you believe in coincidences, some of these deaths have clear explanations, but that doesn't mean they're not manufactured to look disconnected. The deaths at Wright-Patterson in October 2025, involving an Air Force acquisition manager, his wife, and a 25-year-old operations analysis officer, appear to have been the result of a murder-suicide, captured on security cameras. The murder of Loureiro has been connected to a suspect with a prior shooting at Brown University. But the argument from coincidence weakens considerably once you examine what these individuals actually knew and who they worked for, and once you notice what their institutions chose not to say. The Sentinel Network, which has traced the professional connections between these individuals through patent filings, congressional testimony, DTIC records, and federal contract databases, argues that this is not a loose collection of people who happen to work in defense, but one documented system, traceable through institutional linkage. Reza vanished in Los Angeles County. Grillmare was killed in Los Angeles County. Both worked in the shadow of the JPL Caltech corridor where America's planetary defense infrastructure is built. McCasland vanished in Albuquerque, home of Kirtland AFB and Sandia. The Wright-Patterson deaths occurred in Dayton, Southern California, New Mexico, Ohio, the precise triangle where AFRL operates. And at each point on that triangle, the same response from the institutions involved: the minimum possible disclosure. JPL said nothing about Reza. NASA said nothing. Caltech's statement about Grillmare described him as having passed away suddenly without using the word shot. Wright-Patterson offered counseling services. Whether this silence reflects the ordinary bureaucratic instinct toward self-protection, genuine sensitivity over classified programs, or something more troubling is precisely what we do not know. But it is a pattern within the pattern, and it deserves to be named as such. Congress has begun to notice. Representatives Tim Burchett of Tennessee and Eric Burleson of Missouri have both spoken publicly about their concern. Burleson requested FBI involvement in the disappearances, telling Fox News that McCasland's case, in which a retired general apparently walked out of his home, leaving all his devices and never returned, is deeply concerning. Burchett, who told podcaster Benny Johnson that something dark is going on, added, "I know these scientists and researchers. They have testified. We've got to get to the bottom of it. It's just too much. Too much is going on right now. And by the way, I'm not suicidal." That last remark is not a throwaway line. It is a congressman preemptively distancing himself from the list of the dead. The question that haunts this story is not whether there is a grand conspiracy, but whether the American government, which has, in the current political moment, shown some appetite for declassifying what it previously concealed, is capable of conducting a genuine inquiry into what is happening to the people who built and sustained its most sensitive programs. The country has, over the past several years, inched toward acknowledging that its defense and intelligence apparatus has been less than fully honest with the public on matters ranging from the origin of certain viruses to the contents of certain programs at certain air bases in Ohio. The same apparatus now finds itself losing, through death or disappearance, an unusual number of the very people who would have known where the bodies, figuratively or otherwise, are buried. The Book of Numbers records that when men went to scout the land and returned with their report, the question was not whether the giants they described were real, but what should be done in response. The land was real. The giants were real. The question was courage. We are at a similar juncture. The deaths are real. The silence is real. The connections are real enough to demand a serious accounting, not from partisan commentators, but from the institutions entrusted with the nation's security and with the lives of those who serve it. Whatever the explanation turns out to be, the American people are owed one.
All right, thank you for being patient and listening through all that. Again, it was important stuff because I think Americans need to be made aware and need to be continuously made aware, if necessary, of how awful the situation is, how the coincidences don't seem to match up. In the article, I will admit I had forgotten that this article doesn't go into some of the details that are most compelling. I guess if you're really trying to turn this into a conspiracy, which I believe it is. But let's talk about that now. So, first and foremost, the everyone involved was in some form or fashion tied to what could be considered to be UFOs. Okay, we're talking about propulsion, materials, the astrophysics. These are the things that all these people, and I'm sure there were more. Let's be clear about that. These are the people that we know about. We don't know what's happened to other people who maybe the connection hasn't been made, or they just went missing, or nobody, whatever. It hasn't made big enough news, or something happened. But we can say, let's say there's 15 or so instead of just 9. Just 9. So they're all tied to this. The timing is compelling. The timing is right around, shortly after, at least with some of these, Barack Obama had come out and said that aliens are real, and then he walked back a bit. President Trump came out and said he's going to release all the UFO files. Anna Paulina Luna and others in Congress are calling to release everything. And then it's all of a sudden you've got all of these people dying or disappearing. I think my conspiracy theory is that, yes, there is going to be a variation of what a lot of people have called disclosure, right? This is going to be this big revelation, something about aliens or transdimensional people or non-people, whatever, spacecraft, contact, first contact, 10th contact, whatever. And the reason that it's important that we understand this and how we tie in this story to that is because I believe that whatever it is that's coming is going to be a grand deception. It is going to be used to basically explain away a lot of the theories out there, many theories, including our own Vice President J.D. Vance has openly stated that he believes that what we're seeing is demonic in nature. I have said the same thing many times. One might argue that it's full-blown satanic in nature. This is a form of, we'll call it demonic technology that is doing its thing. But as many people have noted, that if we're talking about demons, we're talking about the lost souls of Nephilim, right? Which I can discuss some other day. We would need angelic control, and I'm talking about the fallen angels who currently don't have access to us. In other words, in both cases, whether you believe that it's from the fallen angels or from the demons, either way, you need human interaction. You need humans to be involved in we'll call it the expansion of our technology way above and beyond anything that we could have imagined. And this is the case, and I should do a show about this someday. This is the case. We are able to do things that we shouldn't be able to do. The technological advances that we've been able to make, especially over the last 80 years or so, are what, if you tried to convince somebody without I'm not saying somebody like, oh, you tried to convince somebody from the 19th century. No, I'm saying if you took somebody today and really sat them down and showed them how things have developed, how technology has developed, it has done so in a lot of ways, not all technology, obviously, but a lot of these technologies, they made leaps and bounds that don't make any sense. I mean, quantum computers, AI, when it comes to stealth, GPS, basically anything. Let's just call it what it is. Anything that DARPA was involved in at some point. They were doing things that were allegedly impossible and that are still considered to be semi-impossible, and they were doing them, 30, 40 years ago. How's that? Well, I would argue that it's because they are working with, either directly or indirectly, working with demonic influences, and that's where these scientists come into play. I think that they knew too much. They could identify, let's say, for example, just as I'm going to use, I forgot which one it was, the one that worked on materials that could take superheating. So you need certain types of materials to be used for the types of flight patterns that we're seeing in a lot of the UFO footage. Now, this person, once there is disclosure and information starts coming out, this person could have very easily blown the whistle and said, wait, no, that's not alien. We were developing that in 1984 or something like that. Well, they can't let that person do this. And this, in particular, the general, what's his name? I lost his name. Retired Major General William Neal McCasland. This is a guy that was basically in charge of everything, all the special projects. Okay, he had access to the lion's share of the information. This guy disappears, doesn't take his phone, doesn't take his glasses, but make sure to take his gun. Come on. Okay, he knew something, he did something. There's something there. He didn't want to be found. That's why you wouldn't take your phone. If you want to be found by the government, take your phone with you. They'll find you anywhere. Okay, doesn't even need to be on. They'll find you. Point is that we have to keep investigating this story because something crazy. Maybe my theory is wrong. Maybe it's something completely different. I don't know, and I actually don't care. Because I don't think that we'll be able to find out the information until they reveal it. I just need you to be aware that the information is out there. I need you to be aware that crazy things are unfolding. I don't know if they're going to be unfolding in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, months, years. I don't think it'll be decades. I think we're much closer than that. And when it does, you have to be aware that it's part of a conspiracy, part of a deception, a grand deception that's supposed to take the human race in the wrong direction. This has been talked about, foretold in the Bible in multiple chapters, not just Revelation. You can read about how our vanity, how our stupidity is going to get the better of us in the end times for many of us. And I need you to not be vain, not be stupid, and understand that they are going to lie to us. They're going to give us the most compelling lies, so compelling it could even confuse the elect if that were possible. There are bad things afoot, and I need you to know. I need you to spread the word, to start asking more questions, not less. Is there other news, other important things, other things going on in your life? You betcha. I'm not saying throw everything down and start looking for retired Major General McCasland. What I'm saying is that gird yourself in your wear the full armor of God and pray through all of this. We are coming on to these times, and so much of America, so much of the world is completely naked, no armor, no spiritual armor. They either took it off or never put it on in the first place. And this time, perhaps more than any time in human history, we need that armor because we are under attack. This is an assault on our souls, not just our minds and hearts. They're going after our souls. And knowing this, it behooves us. It becomes our duty, our responsibility to be watchmen, to warn others. But again, most importantly, to make sure that we are praying through this, that we are seeking discernment at all times. That we are testing, not just testing what people are saying about the Bible, but testing what people are saying about government, what people are saying about culture, what people are saying about other religions. Test everything and pray through it all. I'm in the midst right now of I don't know how long it's going to be. It'll be an extended water fast. Today is day 3. Okay, so at the end, just before midnight, I will be at 72 hours without having any food. I've been drinking water, and I will admit, I did discover, I don't even know if I should show this. I did discover Zevia. It's not very good, but it's, if all you're drinking is water, This has 0 calories, so it's technically still fasting. We'll see what affects my fast, but either way, I'm going to be doing this for a while. And whether if it affects my fast and makes it to where I don't lose as much weight as I normally would, so be it. This isn't I'm not fasting necessarily for the weight. That's great. I need to lose the weight, but I'm fasting because we need, again, more than any other time in human history, we need discernment, and I need discernment. I need to know. I need to pray through this and find out what is going on, what's happening with Iran, what's happening with the Middle East, what's happening with China, what's happening in the local community, what's happening with my life, your life, everybody's lives. We are approaching what I believe to be the end times fulfillment, the biblical prophetic fulfillment, known as the end times. And I know, we can argue about whether the end times actually technically started at the moment that the veil was ripped, but that's a discussion for another day, probably on a different show. So be sure to follow this show. Yeah, you can follow it on Substack, basedunderground.substack.com. It's one good place to get it. You can always find me on Apple Podcast. We don't put these shows generally on YouTube for obvious reasons, but we will put it on Rumble. So we'll see from there. That's it. Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, you all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless. The insurance you need to protect your American dream. That's the tagline for my great friends over at America First Healthcare. You can find out more for yourself. You can reach them by going to patriot.tv/health, patriot.tv/health. Check them out, see what they offer, whether it's for health, for life, for business insurance. They do a fantastic job. But that's just me saying it. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to them through that link, talk to them, and see what they can do for you. Because look, we can say, oh great, it's awesome, they're America First company and blah 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 blah, they have their shared values and all that. That's great, right? It really is. But is it better? I mean, we're not going to be getting worse coverage just because we can they might give us worse coverage, but by golly, they promote America. That's that's just not going to happen. We are practical people, my audience here at Patriot TV. But with that said, they claim, and I would encourage you to research it, but they claim that they actually have better coverage than what you get through the government-controlled healthcare systems or even many of the private healthcare offerings out there. And more importantly, perhaps for some of you, they offer better rates with, according to their website, with thousands of insurance plans to choose from. It can feel overwhelming to find the right plan at the right price. At America First Healthcare, we take a holistic approach to make sure we find the best coverage for your exact needs. We get you better rates by helping you choose the right type and amount of coverage. Then we shop around for the best results. They can save you up to 20% on the coverage. Who couldn't use? I know we're most of us, the vast majority of us, are paying. I mean, compared to what we used to pay, my goodness, we're paying a lot. 20% right off the top. That would be a huge benefit. So reach out to my good friends over at America First Healthcare. Go to patriot.tv/health, patriot.tv/health.